All right, listen up. We've got a real ringer today. Apparently, someone from the guard thinks she can hang with the big boys. The words, slick with sarcasm, dripped from Sergeant Vance's lips. The assembled crowd of elite marksmen, all hardened operators in their prime, chuckled nervously. They all turned to look at the woman standing quietly at the end of the firing line. She was older than the rest, her face etched with lines the sun had drawn, her hair pulled back in a simple, no-nonsense bun. She was methodically checking the action on a well-worn M210 rifle, her movements economical and serene, as if she were folding laundry on a quiet afternoon. She offered no reaction to the insult, no flicker of anger, no defensive retort. Her silence was a void in the loud, testosterone-fueled atmosphere of the range. But from the observation tower, Colonel Jennings leaned forward, his binoculars fixed not on her face, but on her hands, on the way her left thumb rested almost unnaturally against the stock. He'd only seen that specific grip once before, 2 decades ago, in a dusty corner of the world he was forbidden to speak of. A ghost of a memory flickered in his mind. If you believe that true respect is earned in silence, not demanded with noise, type competence below. Sergeant Vance, basking in the attention, continued his tirade, his voice booming across the concrete. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is the All-Army Precision Rifle Championship. The targets are at 1,200 meters. The wind is a fickle beast. This isn't for weekend warriors. Are you sure you didn't get lost on your way to the commissary? He gestured vaguely with his clipboard, a smirk plastered on his face. The laughter from the other shooters was louder this time, more confident. They saw what he saw, a woman who seemed out of place, an easy target for their barracks room humor. Eliza Morgan said nothing. She finished her inspection, chambered a single round with a soft, metallic click, and placed the rifle on its bipod. She adjusted the parallax on her scope, her breathing slow and even. She ignored the stares. She ignored the whispers. Her focus narrowed to a single point, a universe contained within the circular view of her optic. The world of assumptions, of arrogance, of loud and empty words, simply ceased to exist. There was only the rifle, the wind she could feel on her cheek, and a small, white, steel plate shimmering in the distant heat haze. Her calm was unsettling. It was a deep, placid lake that hinted at an unfathomable depth, a professional stillness that Vance's blustering ego couldn't begin to comprehend. The range officer's voice crackled over the speakers. Shooters, this is the cold bore qualification. You have 1 shot. 1. Make it count. Firing line is hot. A tense energy rippled through the line of marksmen. The cold bore shot was the ultimate test. The first round fired from a clean, cool barrel, with no prior shots to warm the steel or provide data. It was pure skill, pure calculation, pure instinct. One by one, the shots rang out. A sharp crack, followed seconds later by the disappointing clang of a miss, or the satisfying, high-pitched ping of steel. Most missed. A few were close, hitting the edges of the massive target silhouette. Vance, shooting first to show everyone how it was done, managed a hit on the outer ring and swaggered back from the line with a self-satisfied grin. Then, it was her turn. Eliza Morgan settled behind her rifle. She didn't rush. She laid her cheek against the stock, a familiar and comforting pressure. Her eyes were closed for a full 3 seconds. She wasn't praying. She was listening. Listening to the wind, feeling the earth beneath her, becoming a part of the complex equation she was about to solve. Her finger moved to the trigger, a slow, deliberate motion. The world held its breath. The silence on the range was now absolute, a palpable thing. Even the wind seemed to pause. Vance stood with his arms crossed, a look of smug anticipation on his face, waiting for the inevitable miss that would validate his prejudice. Eliza exhaled slowly, her breath a barely visible wisp in the cool air. At the bottom of that breath, in the perfect, still moment between heartbeats, the rifle fired. The report was not a violent crack like the others. It was a deep, authoritative thump. It was the sound of pure precision. For what felt like an eternity, there was only the receding echo of the shot. Then, through the powerful spotting scopes, it came. Not the loud clang of a hit on the main plate. It was a tiny, almost inaudible tink. On the central monitor, the display flashed. The shot hadn't just hit the target. It had struck the half-inch steel bolt holding the reactive center plate, a target the size of a quarter, dead center. The bolt sheared clean off. The plate fell away. It was a shot that wasn't just improbable. It was statistically impossible. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Vance's jaw went slack. The color drained from his face as he stared at the screen, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. "No," he whispered, the sound swallowed by the deafening silence. "No way. That's not possible." From the observation tower, a single figure descended the metal stairs, his steps slow and deliberate. Colonel Jennings walked onto the range, his presence immediately commanding the attention of every soldier present. He didn't look at Vance. He didn't look at the stunned shooters. He walked directly to Eliza Morgan, who was already calmly ejecting the spent brass casing and clearing her weapon, her task complete. The colonel stopped before her, his gaze sweeping over the worn rifle, the steady hands, the placid expression. He then turned to the rangemaster's terminal, his fingers tapping a few keys. A personnel file appeared on the screen, heavily redacted, vast sections blacked out. But what was visible was enough. The narrator's voice would read it like a litany of forgotten valor. Call sign, Ghostwalker. Unit, Special Mission Unit, Overwatch Division. Deployments, classified. Combat hours, over 3,000. Special skills, high-angle interdiction, cold-bore engagement, counter-sniper operations. The file was a ghost story, a legend whispered about in classified briefings, but never seen in the light of day. It was the service record of an operator who didn't exist. Colonel Jennings turned away from the screen. He faced Eliza Morgan, and in a move that sent a shockwave through the entire assembly, he snapped to the rigid posture of attention. His hand came up in a salute so sharp, so full of reverence. It was a physical blow to the arrogance that had filled the air moments before. "Ma'am," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a command authority that could move armies. "It is an honor to have you on my range." He held the salute, his eyes locked on hers. Eliza simply gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Colonel." Her voice was soft, her first word spoken all day. Jennings then lowered his hand and turned to the dumbfounded crowd, his gaze finally falling on the pale, trembling Sergeant Vance. "You all see a guardsman," the colonel began, his voice low and dangerous. "I see the operator who held the Eastern Ridge at Firebase Apex for 72 hours straight, alone, after the rest of her team was compromised. You hear silence and assume weakness. I hear the discipline of a professional who knows that every wasted word is a wasted breath. You made an assumption, Sergeant. And in our line of work, assumptions get people killed. You are lucky yours only cost you your pride." The story of the impossible shot, of the quiet woman named Eliza Morgan, spread through the base like wildfire. It was whispered in chow halls, recounted in barracks, and debated on secure forums. They called it the Ghostwalker shot. The tale grew with each telling, becoming less a report of an event and more the birth of a legend. The cocky young shooters who had laughed now spoke her name with a mixture of fear and awe. They rewatched the range footage, trying to dissect her technique, her stance, her impossible calm. Sergeant Vance was a changed man. The bluster was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted humility. A few days later, he found Eliza cleaning her rifle in the armory. He stood before her, head bowed, unable to meet her eyes. "Ma'am," he stammered, his voice thick with shame. "There's no excuse. I was arrogant. I was unprofessional. I was wrong." Eliza Morgan paused her work. She looked at him, her expression not of anger, but of something akin to a patient instructor. "We all make assumptions, Sergeant," she said, her tone even and direct. "The important thing is to learn from them. The target doesn't care about your opinions. It only cares about your fundamentals. Focus on those." She offered no absolution, only a lesson. It was more valuable. The lesson stuck. Sergeant Vance became one of the most meticulous and humble instructors on the base, frequently using his own story as a cautionary tale against ego. The brass casing from Eliza's shot was mounted on a small wooden plaque and hung in the range's ready room. Underneath it, a simple inscription read, "The Ghostwalker shot. 1200 m, cold bore. Assumptions are a liability." That firing point, number 17, was never called 17 again. It became known simply as the Morgan Line. New shooters, arriving full of confidence and swagger, would be brought to the plaque and told the story. They were taught that the most dangerous threat on the battlefield is often the one you underestimate. They learned that competence is quiet, that professionalism is a state of mind, not a volume setting. Eliza Morgan had done more than just make an impossible shot. She had recalibrated the culture of an entire institution. She had taught them that the true measure of a warrior isn't in the stories they tell about themselves, but in the legends others tell about them long after they are gone. Her silence had become the most powerful lesson of all. Years later, a new generation of marksmen trained at that facility. They were sharper, more focused, and noticeably quieter. The culture of loud arrogance had been replaced by one of quiet, demonstrated competence. Instructors would point to the plaque on the wall, the brass casing now burnished by time, and tell the story of the quiet woman who humbled a firing line with a single, perfect shot. The legend of Ghostwalker served as the ultimate reminder that skill knows no gender, age, or superficial boundary. It is a currency of its own, earned in shadow and spent in moments of absolute clarity. It reminded them that the deadliest people on earth are the ones who have nothing to prove. They don't need to tell you who they are. Their actions, precise and final, will do it for them. The true legacy of Eliza Morgan wasn't the impossible shot itself. It was the standard of quiet professionalism she left behind, a standard etched not in stone, but into the very character of the soldiers who came after. That is the nature of true strength. It is not found in the boastful threat, but in the silent promise of action. It is a legacy defined not by the noise you make, but by the deafening silence your competence leaves in its wake. It is the understanding that the greatest respect is not demanded, but commanded by the simple, undeniable proof of your worth. It is a quiet calm in the face of chaos, a steady hand when others tremble, a clear eye focused on the mission while others are blinded by their own assumptions. This is the path of the quiet professional, a path where deeds, not words, are the final arbiter of legacy. It is a truth forged in the crucible of conflict and proven time and again on the firing lines of history. The most powerful voice is often the one that is never raised. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where silent discipline defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.